Hey everyone, welcome to the latest session of Tech Insights. I'm Jed Wallace and I'm a technical marketing manager here with Cohesity. Now, I'm excited. Today we're joined by Brad Gussin, a principal group product manager, Microsoft 365 collaborator apps and platforms at Microsoft. Now, Brad, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, first, thanks, Jed, for inviting me to chat with you today about Microsoft 365 resiliency and how Cohesity and Microsoft are partnering to solve some of the most important problems I see customers having today. So a little bit of background on myself. I have been with Microsoft 365 for a little over 6 years now, almost 7, I think. I have an additional 15 years experience across the semiconductor industry and the infrastructure as a service tech space. Outside of work, I really love hanging out on the water any chance I can get. And, the Puget Sound is a great place to do that, except maybe not in the winter, but coming soon to the summer.
That's awesome. Thank you. So, let's start at the top. There's this idea of shared responsibility. I hear it all the time in cloud discussions, but I feel like it still confuses people. How would you explain what Microsoft is responsible for and what still lands on the customer? I mean, I I always say Microsoft keeps the lights on, but you're still in charge of what's inside the building, right? So,
Yeah, that's a great analogy, Jed. So since Microsoft 365 is a software as a service or SaaS offering, we are responsible for the resiliency, durability, availability, and disaster recovery of the service itself. That's not really something the customer needs to care about. But we do sync and store modifications and deletions that the customer tells us they want in the service. So if you go ahead and modify a file or you delete an email, anything like that, we, as the custodians of the data, sync that to our service, which again, the service, we are responsible for its resiliency. But if the customer has executed an unintended or malicious action, such as a deletion, which can happen either by a human or an application, or in this new world by AI itself, then they need a solution that can quickly and securely roll back those undesired changes within our service. And so that is what we mean when we say a shared responsibility.
gotcha. So, in your experience, where do they get it most often wrong? Maybe assuming that Microsoft backs up everything. I mean, I remember that the recycling bin used to equate to the backup. That myth. I've heard it more times than I could count.
Yeah, good question. We're getting into a lot of nuance here that I think sometimes confuses customers. And so if you had your files only on your laptop or your desktop and something happened to that device, then you might be in trouble. Now, luckily, if you're using Microsoft 365 and you've synced that data up to our cloud, then that serves as a backup for those devices
Right.
already. Now, going a step further, like you mentioned, we have a lot of pretty good small scale recovery capabilities in M365. For example, the recycle bin. So if someone deletes a file and then they decide they need it back, they can reach into the recycle bin and recover it pretty easily and quickly. Basically, the user themselves can get their file back.
Right.
Likewise, with file versions, they can sift through older versions of their file. If I had edited something, I know we were collaborating on a document before, Jed, and so if you made an edit that I didn't like and then I needed to get back the prior one, I could just go into the version history and recover it. You'll notice in both of those cases, the recycle bin and the version recovery is a pretty user-based action. And so you can imagine if a company is hit by a large-scale attack where many of their files or sites or mailboxes are impacted by a malicious or accidental issue,
Mhm.
recovering from just those versions or the recycle bin, reaching out to all your users and saying, hey, can you please go back to this prior point in time, is going to be pretty complicated. And so it turns out to be practically impossible to recover from a large scale event with those,
Understood.
again, recycle bin version features. And that's exactly why we created the Microsoft 365 backup storage platform, sometimes referred to as MBS for short, and I'll refer to it as MBS going forward now, since
That's a mouthful.
it's quite a mouthful, yeah. So that is why we developed the MBS platform and why Cohesity delivered its integrated solution with that MBS platform. It provides ultra fast recovery at speeds of up to and sometimes well beyond 3 terabytes an hour.
That's pretty
so
impressive.
If you know anything about how long it takes to move data in and out of a tenant, you'll recognize that 3 TB per hour and more is pretty impressive. And that means for the average size tenant, they can do a complete recovery from a malicious or accidental event in a matter of hours. And for our largest tenants, it means they can get back a healthy state of their data at really incredible speeds. And we're really, really happy to have worked with Cohesity to deliver this integrated solution.
Agreed. We love our partnership too with Microsoft. You guys are the best. And I'm not paid to say that, by the way. So,
yeah.
A practical recovery path, using the right tools, I think is paramount. Can you share an example of a company that, they thought they were covered, but learned that the hard way they weren't covered at all? What happened and what changed afterwards?
Sure. Yeah, we do get calls through support from customers, and luckily not as many now that we've launched this MBS solution that customers have adopted. But again, we've seen cases where a customer, like 1,000 of their SharePoint sites or OneDrive accounts containing hundreds of terabytes of data, were compromised by a malicious attack, and they've struggled sort of to recoup all of that data to a healthy state solely by trying to upload it again from an offline copy. And so the tech that we've delivered here allows them to roll back to that healthy prior point in time really quickly and effectively and practically. And so we do see these cases come up periodically, and it's important to have effective insurance for those scenarios so that you can stand in front of your board and say, I'm confident that I can recover from such an attack, which unfortunately have just been becoming more and more frequent in the world today.
Yeah, it's super unfortunate. Yeah, it's nothing like a close call to make, people all of a sudden make budgets appear for their backup, right? Once they realize that it's not only, disaster recovery, it's not only security, it's pretty much, it's everything, right? It's your ability to get up and running quickly so you're not losing that revenue. So
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're building like a baseline protection plan for M365, whether that's Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, or Teams, what are some of the must-dos?
I always like to say you aren't buying backup, you're buying the ability to recover business operations quickly. And so with that in mind, you want to pick a solution that gives you both the broadest coverage, it gives you the deepest set of features, and finally gives you that way to recover quickly, because that's really what you're buying when you buy a backup solution. And so I know that Cohesity has some great coverage across most, if not all, of our Microsoft 365 workloads. You mentioned a number of them just a second ago. So that's good broad coverage. And I know you have a pretty deep set of features as well that I'm sure customers can go review online. And then finally, with the integration with MBS, they get that final important piece, which is fast recovery. So they don't have to say, hey, we're offline and can't get our business done, and it might impact reputation, and it might impact other financial goals as well. And so with all of those things together, I think that stitches together what customers typically look for when they are trying to decide what kind of solution to buy.
Yeah, I always think of Teams data. It kind of feels like the Wild West sometimes. It's like every conversation is a mini database, right? And so to have that backed up and easily readily restorable, I think it's super important.
Absolutely true. Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit, talking about Azure workloads. So tell us what's the difference about protecting VMs, SQL, or even Kubernetes data compared to, SaaS data? And, I know with hybrids still the reality for so many orgs, but, how do you keep the policies consistent, via on-prem and cloud?
This is again another great place where Cohesity can help out. And so I've worked again in both infrastructure as a service, which is essentially what Azure is, as well as software as a service with Microsoft 365. And when you have a SaaS offering like M365, we on the M365 team take care of the resiliency best practices when building on top of Azure. But if you're building your own SaaS application on top of Azure, or you have Azure, like you mentioned, VM, SQL, Kubernetes, etc., which is at a lower layer, you need to ensure that you're architecting in a resilient manner for your service. And I'm sure you have a lot more to add to this too, Jed. So I'll kick it back to you to add
Yeah.
on to that.
So, Cohesity definitely adds a resilient data protection and recovery layer on top of the Azure. So, SaaS builders don't have to build it themselves. We protect the SaaS applications and the data across all the different zones and regions, enabling fast recovery from whether it's outages or corruption, and provide that built-in cyber resiliency that people are looking for with that immutable backups and ransomware detection. I mean, the bottom line is really that Azure gives you the resilient infrastructure, and Cohesity, we ensure your SaaS data and recovery are resilient. So now, kind of pivoting here, when ransomware hits, I mean, backups become the last line of defense, right? Which that shouldn't be, but it's especially important to have that secure backup as part of the cyber resiliency strategy. So, what's one thing companies can do? They can do right now that makes sure their backups can't be encrypted or deleted. We always say your backup should be the thing that can't panic and when everything else is on fire. So it's important. I think that's important. So what are your thoughts?
It's interesting. We see attackers tap into that kind of concern, and we've seen attacks where the attacker goes and finds a company's backup wherever it may be located, and will attempt to destroy, disconnect, delete that backup, and then come and attack the primary source. And so, at the end of the day, with anything security related, it's all about defense in depth. It's about having a robust solution that can be resilient against those kinds of attacks. And so Cohesity with Microsoft 365 backup storage retains backups on append-only storage. That means someone cannot come in and modify existing backups once they are taken. They cannot be encrypted. It also means when someone tries to delete the backups, we will notify multiple people within the customer organization that, hey, watch out, it looks like someone may be tampering with your backups. You may want to go review who has access to those controls and revoke anyone that is not. If you're checking your audit log, you can see who's doing what and say, I'm going to revoke this person's access because it looks like, I don't know, they were trying to remove policies or they were trying to delete the backups that existed. And
right.
We also offer a 90-day recovery from deletion. So if someone does successfully delete the backups, you can get them back within 3 months. And so again, it's all about defense in depth. It's about trying to stay a step ahead of the attackers and not relying on sort of just not relying just on the backups alone, but making sure that you have a good recovery plan and that you have notifications in place to help prevent malicious actions.
Yeah, and I always tell people to make sure not only that they have that plan, but they test it, whether that's quarterly, every 6 months or what, because if you don't test it, you don't get that muscle memory, right? You're just going to have a lot of chickens running around with their heads cut off, basically, so I really think, cyber resiliency is it's definitely more than just hygiene, right? It's also that, like you said, it's compliance, audit, and it's reputation as well. So How do teams prove that they're meeting those requirements to regulators and and the board without drowning in reports and things like that? So instead of show me the report, which has basically become the new trust me, what do they do?
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point. Essentially, they should run their SOP. They should print out what their standard operating procedure SOP should be for recovery. They should present that they have that plan. They should highlight, hey, here's the last time that we ran through that SOP and what the result was, so that we can show that this has been hardened, it's tried and true, and that we're not just taking the word of the individual or the company that we're procuring the solution from. It does all start, though, with procuring the right solution that provides the most robust and fast recovery possible. And then once that's in place, you can stress test it and ensure that it's going to solve the problems and that you are prepared, you have that fire drill set to be able to recover quickly. It is all about preparedness in this case.
I wholeheartedly agree with about being prepared. So, how's Cohesity's data protection platform uniquely able to address these challenges we've mentioned? Especially when it comes to expanding native protections, strengthening cyber resilience for workloads, and data across Microsoft 365, Azure, or like we mentioned earlier, hybrid environments, especially hybrid Microsoft environments.
Yeah, so I think because Cohesity has integrated with MBS and you cover all of these, like you said, Teams is a little bit of a Wild West. It's
Right.
relatively new. So you got Teams, you got OneDrive, you got SharePoint, you have Exchange, you have other workloads as well, crossing Azure, crossing on-prem, crossing things outside of Microsoft as well. And all of that integrated with MBS provides a great solution for customers. So again, get protected now, because waiting can cause you headaches down the line. Be prepared on that restore, and having all of that, I'll say, on a single pane of glass in a single application that is CCS with MBS, it makes your life easier, because it means you're configuring everything in one place. And it means when something bad happens, you are able to recover in one place, and it's all auditable. It's all audited. You get notifications, et cetera, et cetera. And so you want to have that cohesive experience for onboarding, for monitoring, for recovering, all audited, all secure, et cetera. And that's really what sets CCS on MBS apart.
Yeah, you definitely get that peace of mind with us working together. And I know it might sound cheesy, but we do work better together, I would say. So, if you could leave the audience with three quick takeaways, things they should check or start doing tomorrow, what would they be in your mind?
Yeah, good question again. And I might maybe already covered a little bit of this, so sorry, folks, if it's repetitive. But first, again, think through what recovery would look like for your organization if you were compromised. Number one, how fast can you actually get back up and running with a healthy copy of your data? Because it's not good enough that you have the backup. It's really how fast you can use that backup in production. And you might want to think through different tiers of your sites or your mailboxes, like which sites are most critical for your operations, which users are most critical for your operations, and then you can kick off a round of restores for those folks first. Although I'll say, to some extent, with the speed of MBS, that differentiation becomes less important, because we can do pretty fast mass restores. Still, it's good to understand, hey, this is my most, this is what's running my retail site where most of my sales are coming from, or these are my critical oil and gas operating sites that keep the refineries going, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you know what those are, you can target the restore of those first. So again, like, protect yourself with the right solution, get that SOP in place so that you know what it is you need to recover and test it out. And finally, I think, like I said before, don't wait till it's too late. You mentioned it too, Jed. Like,
Right.
budgets are important, but you never want to be stuck in a situation where you don't have this enabled yet, and are caught in a situation where maybe you have to pay someone ransom or have to shut down your operation. So think through how fast you need to recover or what you need to recover. Get it in place today rather than tomorrow. And
Yeah,
we're here to help too.
yeah, I think the prospect of being on the news should light a fire under anybody's seat, right? So, so you know, I want to thank you so much for joining us today to talk about all this great stuff, the partnership with Microsoft and Cohesity, and CCS on MBS. I'll also mention it's in the Azure Marketplace as well. And if you want to learn more, guys, you can go out to cohesity.com. We just did a Cohesity expert-led demo on protecting M365 on MBS with Cohesity. And if you also want to see more about our partnership with Microsoft, you can head out to our website /partners/Microsoft. And that's a wrap. It's another episode of Cohesity Tech Insights. And I want to thank everybody for watching.
Thank you too.
Thank you.